one thing that I've learned from horror movies that I am very thankful for is that when weird stuff starts happening, like if I'm walking in circles when I shouldn't be, or I'm in somewhere and pianos and telephones randomly start appearing, I'm going to get myself out of there. Check, please, I'd like to leave. Welcome back to 31 Days of Halloween. So today we're going to be talking about a movie called As Above, So Below, which is a 2014 found footage sort of film where this woman named Scarlett is trying to find the Philosopher's Stone, basically, at Nicholas Flamel's grave. And the movie starts out with her finding this thing called the Rose Key, which I'm not sure if it's like an actual thing, but it's supposed to be a version of the Rosetta Stone that can help alchemists translate certain texts to kind of figure out where this Philosopher's Stone is. I really like this movie. The first time I watched it, I thought that it was going to be really scary based on like previews that I had seen. So I watched it while I was doing something else. So I was only kind of half paying attention. And while I was half paying attention, I realized, oh hey, like this actually seems really cool. And yes, it seems really creepy and scary, but maybe not as creepy and scary as like I originally thought it was. And so I rewatched it again, and I found that for the problems that it does have, I actually really enjoyed it. And one of the things that really bothered me in some of the reviews that I read was that people said that it's a cliched monstrosity. I believe is a direct quote from a review that I read, and I don't understand how it's a cliched monstrosity. Um, I mean, I do have some issues with the super shaky camera angles and how dark it is sometimes, because when it's that dark and that shaky, you can't necessarily see what's going on in the film. And like sometimes you want to see more, and I don't think the darkness here served a greater purpose or made the movie more tense the same way that it did in a movie like The Descent, where the darkness helped to kind of like hide stuff in the background. That didn't really do anything here. They even purposely, like with the people's headlamps, they weren't as bright, or they were angled differently so that you couldn't see stuff in the cave. Not in the cave, in the catacombs underground, and that was more frustrating than adding to the atmosphere at times. But as for it being cliched, um, the reviews talked about how it was cliched because the idea is that these people get stuck down there in the catacombs because they have like unresolved issues in their lives, whether it's guilt over something. Actually, it's mostly, I think it's all guilt over something, or like they did something bad in their lives and now they have to be punished for it. And what I think these people are missing out on, this is set up pretty much almost exactly like Dante's Inferno. And I'm not sure if you can see it so well here. I don't have a book for Dante's Inferno. I borrowed it from the library, but I do have this really cool video game for the PlayStation 3 that I've played a couple times, which walks you through Dante's Inferno. You get to play as Dante, and you go through all the levels of hell. And if you're familiar with that story, you can kind of recognize the different levels of hell that they're going through. So, like, they first get in there and they're in the vestibule or the waiting area. And then you kind of get to Limbo, which is where they meet La Taupe, who is like this place's version of Charon. And he's supposed to guide them through, but he kind of doesn't guide them through the way that he should, which in some iterations of Charon, he's kind of a jerk and won't take you places even though he's supposed to, or he's just really mean. And then they just proceed down. So I don't want to go through all the different levels because I don't want to do any spoilers. But the next one after that, I'll just do one more just to kind of emphasize that like this is basically based or structured around Dante's Inferno, is the next level down is lust. And when you're in lust, there is supposed to the people there are basically being tortured and tormented by this vortex or this cyclone that deafens everything. And when these guys get down to that level, everything gets muffled as if you are in this cyclone and you can't hear. So I think that I don't want to say like the movie's too smart because the critics obviously didn't agree. They gave it really poor ratings. I think the critic score on Rotten Tomatoes is like a 20. And they usually get and or like this kind of like highbrow horror or whatever, but maybe it just wasn't highbrow enough for them. Maybe they didn't like the maybe I don't know. Maybe it was cliched. It didn't feel cliched to me. There are plenty of other movies that the critics have liked that felt way more cliched to me. So these characters then have to traverse through these levels. And they say like the only way out is down. There's a lot of really neat indications that they are in Dante's Inferno, like different quotes that are written on the wall that are taken almost directly from the text. The movie is legitimately creepy and scary. I think the acting by the characters is pretty good because you can see on their faces, you know, that they're scared and that they're freaked out and uncomfortable with what's going on. Like there's no question that you know, there would have been genuine fear if these people had been real and not just actors and actresses. And maybe that lends itself to the fact that they actually filmed this in the catacombs under Paris for the most part. I believe this is the first and only film that's been granted permission to film in the catacombs, which is pretty neat. I always thought it would be kind of cool and also really scary and freaky to go visit the catacombs because there's like thousands and thousands of dead people and their bones are just there. And it's different than being in a cemetery because like in a cemetery, you know, there's dead people, but you can't see them. And then here you walk in there and it's just like, oh, here's some skulls and like femurs stuffed into the wall. These used to be people. And it's like, oh my gosh. Like if you are superstitious or like anything of that sort, that has to be super freaky, like to be in there. And you know, just experiencing that has to change you or affect you in some sort of way. So I gave this movie a 7 and my friend gave it a 6. It gets in the 60s on IMDb. And like I said about Rotten Tomatoes, the critics give it like a 20 and general viewership gives it a 40. I don't understand the hate for this movie or the dislike or the feeling that it's cliched. I think if you look deeper into it, you'll like the fact that it's kind of structured around Dante's Inferno. I don't think I've ever seen a movie that's like that. I've read a book that's like that, but I've never seen a movie that does it and kind of does it in this way where it makes it creepy and it makes it dark and, you know, you can still try and be hopeful at the same time. I've rewatched this movie a bunch of times, which is why I can't help but give it something like a 7, and I don't feel that it's cliched. So, I'm going to talk about some spoilers, like the very, very end. So if you haven't seen this movie and you are interested in seeing it, this is the time to exit out of the video. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and save or share. And I'll see you in the next video. And for now, we're going to be talking about spoilers. So, one of my favorite parts of this movie is the way that it ends. And part of it is because, like, it ties into the name, as above, so below. It ties into the idea that in order to get out, you have to keep going down, which seems counterintuitive because you want to get back up to street level. So at the end, they basically keep clawing their way down, and when they come out, they're basically upside down, coming out of this manhole cover onto the streets of Paris. And it's Scarlett, George, and Zed. Nobody else lives. Everybody else dies. And they all kind of die on the levels of their sins and in the way that they're supposed to die for that level. So like Papillon has a lot of guilt over accidentally burning a guy to death in the guy's car, and I believe he dies on the level of betrayal. And for that sin, you're supposed to be buried upside down up to your calves, and that's how he dies. Like they try to pull him out and stuff, and they can't get him, and then they eventually just have to leave him. Um, and then Scarlet encounters her father, who committed suicide on the violence level. So there's violence against yourself, violence against others, and violence against the state or religion or something like that. But she encounters him as a suicide in that violence level. Or, yeah, level, because they call them levels in Dante's Inferno. So, again, like, it requires a little bit of thinking and a little bit of digging, but I feel like the poetry in this movie is just underappreciated, for it to be called a cliched monstrosity. Ugh, it's frustrating, because like I said, there's other movies that are way more cliched, that get better reviews from critics and stuff. I mean, take the most recent Halloween movie that came out, the reboot that they just did, in this new like trilogy that they're trying to, I guess, end Halloween with. I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis has a whole like badass woman montage, like she's trying to be Sarah Connor in it. You know, that movie couldn't have possibly been more cliched, and people loved it. So I feel like this movie's unfairly judged, and I really like it. I recommend going to see it, just to see for yourself. Don't take the reviews for what they say, because it's better than that. And if you disagree with me, sorry, I recommended the movie so hard. I just feel pretty strongly that this is a good movie, and it's worth the time to sit down and watch and like digest and process it. Because I've watched it a bunch of times. So, thanks for sticking around. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share. And I will see you guys in the next video. And if creepy stuff starts happening, make sure you get out. Otherwise, you'll die. Bye, guys.